everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar on remaining human in a digital world. My name is Tracy McDonald, and I am the Director of Custom Training for the Learning and Development Initiative, which is a collaboration between NJIT and the New Jersey Innovation Institute. For those of you who may not be familiar with who we are and what we do, our primary mission in work and in life is to connect people to the skills that they need to be successful. So we are all about learning, development, and that can be anything from AI-based skills, which will come into today's conversation, as well as human skills, such as communication, conflict resolution, things like that. So that's who we are, and that is what we do. And here is a brief overview of what our session will look like today. So the welcome, just did that. Introductions are forthcoming. There are some questions that we have preset for our panelists today, and between myself and my co-moderator, Joe, we will be asking the panel these questions, and I expect a very lively discussion throughout the webinar. We will put some polls out for our audience. We'd love to hear your opinions on some of these things that we're talking about. And then at the very end, there will be just some information about what's coming up this fall. We've got 2 more webinars scheduled, as well as a handful of workshops that we are planning that will follow essentially some of what we're talking about today, as well as in the future webinars that we have coming up. So with that, I've introduced myself already. We've had some new people join. My name is Tracy McDonald. I am the Director of Custom Training with the Learning and Development Initiative. Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Tracy. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Konopka. I'm the Vice President of Workforce Education here at Ocean County College. I've been in technology and learning space for almost 30 years now, and I look forward to today's topic of conversation because, as I think we all would agree, artificial intelligence will be touching our lives in a significant way. And as Tracy mentioned, I think we want to level set and remain human in some form. So thank you, Tracy.
Okay, Gabrielle?
Thank you, Tracy. My name is Gabrielle Esperdy. I'm an architectural and urban historian and critic. I've been a member of the faculty of the Hillier College of Architecture and Design at the New Jersey Institute of Technology since 2001, and I am currently serving as the Dean of the college, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Justina?
Hello, great to be here. Justina Saad, Managing Director, Innovation Solutions at the Burning Glass Institute. And the Institute is basically a data laboratory focused on understanding mobility, equity, and opportunity through research and experimentation, lots of data. I am my journey in the labor market started when I was in the Director of Labor Market Information for the state of New Jersey during a very turbulent time, the financial crisis. Everything technology was changing so fast. So how do we really understand, looking at skills to understand the transformations in the labor market? And I kept doing that in the space of technology through software products, in higher ed, in the space of corporate analytics. And I'm here now, really delighted to join you.
Thank you. Ned?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ned Lomigora. I'm the founder of 387 Labs. It's a AI-first company. It's been around about 4 years. I also have a background in software consulting industry, which I've built a company in that space for over the last decade. My background is technology. I started working with AI at MIT AI Lab, which is the largest AI research lab in the world. And back then we didn't have the sort of capacity or infrastructure to actually develop applications we have today. Fast forward to today, my company and another company formed the AI Center in Southeastern Europe, and with the collaboration with top universities and institutions in the US. to really globalize this access to talent, and through that also access to resources such as energy required to power the AI revolution, because the compute is the key factor and the limiting factor at the same time in the AI adoption. We do three main things within the 387 labs. One is the development of the applications. We do AI opportunity mapping, matching the use cases to the solutions, to AI solutions. And we also do corporate workshops. And some of our instructors come from MIT and other prestigious universities.
Thank you. All right, so as you can all see, we have quite a variety of people here. And I'd like to just start with a very general question. I think that, here we are in 2024, there is no question that we are living digital lives. We have tools that we use every day. There's the saying, there's an app for that. What would we possibly do without TikTok or Instagram or Google? But through all of this and through history, we as people have remained human. So even through amidst and among technological advances. So I would like to ask our panelists, and Gabrielle, I'll start with you as the architectural historian in the room. What do you think has contributed to us maintaining our humanity throughout technological advances?
Yeah, that's a great question to get us started. I think the critical thing is that these challenges have existed since humans have existed. Technology is part of our DNA, if you will. You have creativity, problem solving, human contact. I think problem solving and creativity have gone historically hand in hand. And with each technological evolution, certainly in the modern era, if we're thinking kind of, printing press forward, there has been a tendency to simultaneously celebrate while also express concerns about the arrival of said technology. And with every advance, there's been a calibration. And I think it is the very nature of creativity and the way that humans engage simultaneously with the technological and if we can even describe something that is more purely creative. But I think we have maintained our humanity by continuing to embrace technology while not allowing it to take over, and also to continue to push it forward. So perhaps it's not so much that it's been about maintaining humanity, but recognizing that the relationship between humanity and technology, between humans and creativity, is always in flux, right? From the printing press to photography to the arrival of the digital revolution, there's always been this embrace hand-wringing. And I think it's really about that calibration. Again, I've been in the Architecture Academy long enough to remember when computers entered the design studio basically in the 90s. So, architecture and the design professions were late adapters relative to Ned's sphere of actually being in the realm of coding and computer science. But there was these extreme reactions. It's going to change everything. It's going to ruin everything. And with each moment, it's about calibration. And frankly, I think that will continue. It may well be that what we believe we are as humans, that's undoubtedly different than it was 1,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. So why should we believe that the definition of human is going to remain static? So 100, 500 years from now, there'll be another way of understanding that. We already know that technology changes the way our brains are wired. We could say, oh, that's good or that's bad, but it's actually just a fact. So I think that it's that calibration that has been essential throughout the history of the things that we currently call humans.
Gabrielle, do you think there's a bigger fear now because of how AI is more human-like than some of the other technologies that you mentioned?
I think that the fears are absolutely, you're absolutely right, Joe, that the fears seem more intense now But what I wonder is that if we go back to the 19th century in particular, and we look at the arrival of the so-called first machine age, there were deep, deep concerns that in the textile mills, that all of these machines of mass production were in essence going to push humans kind of off the stage, and then the sort of the concerns begin to be whether they're tamped down through, let's say, the simple realities of corporate capitalism, whether they're tamped down through larger social change. So I do think that the fears are seemingly more intense now, but I wonder if we go back to the 19th century, if they were not felt as intensely. And certainly anytime a technology seems to replicate this thing that's not just about movement, but is actually about thought, I think that's where we get into the realm of a deeper, and I think we could say sort of an existential concern, and maybe even an ontological concern. Like, is this actually about the nature of who we are, whether we define ourselves as humans, as organic beings? So yeah, I think that there is a deeper concern now, but I'm not sure that it seems deeper, but is it in fact deeper if we kind of went back historically?
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any thoughts from Ned or Justina on how we maintain our humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to take the history, that the way we actually typically have approached these cycles where, we introduce new technology and that technology changes the way we live. Up to this point, all of these technological changes were basically technologies that improved our productivity. They were focused on automation. This is the first time in history that actually a technology has challenged our creativity and idea generation capability. So there's no precedent in the past of how we can approach this, because it was very different what previous technologies were able to do, and we were able to adapt in two ways. One is obviously the creation has never been challenged. Everything was created, the productivity is increased. So we're talking about more on the quantity side versus the quality side. Now we're challenging qualitatively, but at the same time, the speed of adoption of AI is moving so much faster than any other technological advance in the past. It also does not give a lot of time to really plan and prepare. So I do believe that previous frameworks don't even apply to this new technology. So that's the difference, I think, that maybe is missed on many. And I think that humanity in itself, how are we going to preserve humanity? I think the question should be what makes us human. And I think we go back to things like creativity, empathy, those kinds of things that are uniquely human. We also think that in some ways, that itself might be also a biochemical reaction at some point. So there's also a thought that what makes us human is actually a product of chemistry and biology, but there is also that thought that our creativity is such a unique thing that we haven't figured how it happens. We just know it does. And I think those are the only two safe areas, and maybe there's a few others that we really can count on to move on out of this cycle, as to preserve our humanity, to move out of the cycle in a way that we can actually focus on those two areas. So I would say that thinking about how do we preserve creativity, how do we preserve our empathy, there's several ways to think about it. One is, what are the kind of things that humans will be occupying our time with over the next 50 years? We either going to figure this out in the next 50 years or in the next 100 years, there will be a different form of life, if you will, or a being that will not look like necessarily human. And that's, that might be because humans themselves, we've become slowly obsolete in this cycle. Because if you're thinking about how AI is going to be applied, in every aspect of our lives, eventually AI doesn't necessarily need humans. Humans may need AI to live and operate, but AI by itself may not. So this is not necessarily most philosophical point of view, but it touches upon like how do we actually, what do we do in practical sense? So one is on the government level, I think there's going to be it has to be a strong movement to make sure that people that are going to be affected by AI and more people at all levels will be affected and have been affected, to have some sort of a safety net. And this has to be done. And it has to be done really rapidly, because if we're just lagging behind it, what's going to happen, we can run into issues of having a lot of people getting automated out of what they're currently doing. And then as a product of that, like just say US has a 70%, economy is based on 70% consumer spending. If the purchasing power of the consumer drops because of the automation, requires less people, and that means more job losses, or jobs are devalued, so the earning power drops precipitously. That means the economy is going to have a negative effect of people having less purchasing power. So the government has to really understand that and prepare for that. And there are some initiatives to do that, but very slowly, right? That's the sort of a risk. That's on the government level. At the university level or professional level, there's got to be better sort of inclusion of different sort of people with different skills. And I mean more on the creative side, people that are not technologically typically going into technological professions, because I think we really will depend on our creativity to come out of this a cycle. And today you can see decline in computer science, technological degrees and professions, and people are actually, those professions are getting devalued as we speak very quickly. So, but also there's a projection that more creative people will have more chance to succeed in the new AI era. So we need to pay attention and create new programs at the university level, and also in the professional settings that will allow creative people to actually use AI tools and be more present in all aspects of professional life. I think that's if you look at the Silicon Valley, even given that they're all technological, there's been a movement that says like that there's betting actually on people, let's say English degrees, being ahead of people that have computer science degrees. And this is a real thing, because ability to prompt and conversate with these LLMs, or in the future with some type of AI, is going to be predicated on your ability to communicate, articulate, and also your creativity, how well you actually explain what you want to get what you want. Because ability to code is less and less needed, because all these AI tools are built and designed to replace an engineer. So they're removing the complexity of coding, and then introducing you with the tool that can enhance your creativity.
Thank you for that. And I want to, you've brought up a really good point, which is creativity and also speed of adoption. So to move on to a topic that you've already helped create a segue to, human creativity is something that has been used to solve problems, communicate, move us from point A to point B, whatever it is. If you think back to when, children still are, learning to write, color, draw, crayons, Play-Doh, Legos, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just putting a block on top of another one, right? And now we have tools where you can type in a couple of words and get a paragraph, you can get a paper, you can get an image, right? So artificial intelligence has changed the tools that are available, but how do we keep the creativity active? That's a question that I have for the group, and I think that applies to life, problem solving, jobs, inventions, things like that. So let's hear from our panel about thoughts on where and how we can keep creativity active in this digital.
I think the big opportunity is that a lot of these technologies are automating the tasks that are mundane. So if you look at, at the Institute, we are evaluating the impact at the task level. So a lot of people are talking about just the role, and the role will be eliminated, which never happened. But the task, the job is transforming really, really quickly, and at a very, very deep level. And also, new jobs are being created, and the same jobs are transforming. With that, the potential to expand the space in your role and also in your mental capacity for creativity is expanding quite dramatically. We are already seeing that people who are in the labor market, just looking at the share of tasks that are more creative, are actually expanding very, very rapidly. So with all the technologies that are spreading, more and more people are taking on creative roles because of access. You had an access barrier in the past that I don't know the technology, I don't have these techniques, I can't get in. But you are seeing more and more people with the technology adopting that, which actually also because of that you are getting more, and you have the capacity to get a lot more diverse teams. And with the diversity in the teams, the definition of the problem, formulating, understanding where the problem is and how to what are solutions for it, what are the guardrails. We have an amazing opportunity now for the creative span of our work to expand, and with that, all kind of changes in terms of work style, in terms of everything. Like just think about, in the past, human, a lot of what defined human is their ability to survive and all the physical the physical needs they had, with the use of their mental capacity. That is now narrowing down more and more, and that space to see the problems without, we all got caught in doing mundane tasks, and you become like a machine when you're doing that, and all of a sudden something else, now you don't need to do that task anymore. That is very, very transformative, and also scary, because what really is going to differentiate is the ability to pivot quickly, to actually adapt, and that is a really unique skill for us, that we can adapt. We are one day walking, the next day we are using a bike, and then we are using a car. We have the ability to adapt. When we are less resistant and we adapt, I think the capacity for human creativity will expand quite dramatically.
So Justina, on that same point, and I think this ties into some of what Ned was saying, what responsibility does the organization have to create a safety net for individuals to make sure they understand how their roles could potentially change?
That is very, very important, and I think that is the transparency piece that is not available. I think I had conversations in the past, and people are making like really, really wide statements about AI is going to take your job, and others like, don't worry, everything will be okay, and neither helps. So I'll give you an example. In a transportation, a company that is doing transportation, there is an entire department that all they do is automation and how to automate and the skills. And then there are the truck drivers over here. And why are the truck drivers leaving us? It's like, have you been doing cross training? No. And that is scary. These are supposed to automate these, and if they talk together, there's a problem. But actually, if you look at the job content, people who are the link between the past and the future will become the most valuable. And actually, in real time, are the ones that are hardest to fill today. And so there is information out there about how the roles are transforming. They're not trickling down. And also, as organizations like us need to simplify what are the changes, what are the tasks, what kind of training, what is a pathway for upskilling and reskilling, all that. There is content out there, but too much uninformed agency that you do your own homework and come up with a training plan that works, and that definitely needs to be regulated and phased out. So you see, like, eventually that part of my role is going to be transformed, but how do I work so that I continue to be productive for the organization and the ecosystem today while evolving? That there's so much that needs to be done on that front and is not happening systematically yet.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because in some ways, it's also funny that you brought up trucking, because I was thinking about trucking and the insistence that I think I heard even maybe a decade ago, right? That we need to move beyond the trucker as a person who drives a vehicle from A to B, but actually think about them as a kind of logistics specialist who, through years of experience driving from point A to B, has things that they can bring to the table in an era of automation and autonomous vehicles, et cetera. But, something else, Justina, that you brought up that I think is really worth emphasizing is this nature of reframing so many people's jobs and tasks and jobs through a lens of creativity. Historically, we have thought, oh, well, there are the people who are in the creative sphere, and we even talk about the creative economy, and then there's everyone else. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is that inevitably people are going to need to, and I'll say it this way first, people are going to need to rethink what their job is and to bring what we have historically called creativity to whatever that sphere is, right? And so, and I think we can learn if we go back and look at those activities that were defined as part of the creative sphere historically, and looked at the way they have adapted. So with the onset of mechanical reproduction, no one thought that photography was art, right? They just thought it was just this kind of dumb thing that reproduced what we saw in the world. And then, we got a more sophisticated understanding of that. And those in the creative sphere began to take it on as an artistic practice. Same thing happened with moving images, right? Okay. Oh, movies, just, that junky stuff. And then now all of us probably would agree that there is photography that we understand as supremely creative, and it is an art practice. There is film that is supremely creative, and it is an art practice. I think it's possible for us to learn from those other moments of technological disruption to think about, and I think also that even in the spheres that were not understood as creative, they've gradually learned from those earlier examples. Even if we think about the shift from, and Justina, you also brought up the notion of content creators, and that because we now have access to tools, there was an interesting moment right before the accessibility of the creation of content where the curation of content became accessible.
Yeah.
And I think, and that was also a really important moment. And what we saw happening was that language began to change, and that folks who never thought of themselves in a curatorial space, because curating was the realm of art museums and galleries, et cetera. Yeah. With that moment of content curation, folks started to think of themselves as curators and began to apply that to many, many other aspects of their lives. Now we can think about creativity as also something that can be applied to many, many other aspects of our lives.
I love it. And Ned, I'm gonna just make a very quick comment, and we're all keen to hear your point of view here. But as part of my work, I was working with a Fortune 500 corporate that all they do is the creative content creation, and they came to us with a list of like these 100 occupations. Tell me what is happening with them, and we want to see our market share and what is our potential. And I said, you have the entire world of roles out there that is demanding content creation, and you are stuck in the room, one bedroom in a little house for the space. Actually, the official content creators whose job is exclusively the creative part is declining, but the other jobs, almost 80% of the jobs, all white collar and even the blue collar jobs, are now having to do to create content and to have a creative share, and it is transforming before our eyes. It's changing. Like I'm showing actual shares with numbers that, but it requires that their product lines and everything they are doing is actually needs to transform because the access and the barrier. So that is just a quick content that we're seeing that very, very clearly, Gabrielle.
If I can add to just creativity, I mean, I don't want to like dwell on it because I think a lot of it has been said already. I just see it as a sort of like when I think of creativity, there's like maybe three different aspects or main aspects. One is divergent thinking, the artistic originality or artistic creativity, and then contextual. I think so far the AI has been performing pretty well in divergent thinking, which is generating all these new ideas, and we've been using that probably mostly with the LLMs. The AI has done a lot in the creation, in the artistic side of creation, as we've seen with the moving images, Sora, and those aspects, and where even feature movies could be created. And then the contextual creativity remains a challenge, significant challenge for AI. So that's the area where I think, if you look at these levels or types of creativity, this is where one area where humans have, I think, the best chances of like creating new ways to work with AI or new professions. The humans still are very generally good at creating a really novel concept, novel ideas, original ideas. So that's still in the human realm. Also incorporating the emotional context, like the emotional and cultural context into what we do. That's where humans really are also very, very good at. And then the third thing I would say where humans still have they excel and compared to AI is I guess in producing something that has a deep personal meaning for us, or social component to it that AI still lacks and cannot necessarily do a good job at. So I would say that also gives us an indication which direction we may go when creating new jobs or looking for new roles. I would say that creativity and this whole content creation, I think this is sort of like I think it's a mind trap, because I think if you look at the Spotify, when Spotify started, it was basically promised for these new artists that will come on the Spotify platform, that it will enable a lot of long tail artists to really promote their music and to make a lot of money. And the reality is like less than 0.1% of these creators actually, just because they had a platform, it didn't mean they actually got a few of them promoted themselves through the platform, but vast majority have never, just because the content creation is given to them, or ability to create new content, they have not been able to make living out of it. So I think just because you have the tool, you still have to have the audience that consumes that content, and then having so many people create content now, it makes content in terms of the value of the content, is sort of devalues it and creates a huge competition. So that also goes against like the ability to like live off of tools by just creating content. So there has to be a different ways for us to make these tools. And also the timeline, I mentioned this at the beginning, timeline's too short. I mean, previous revolutions had a lot more time for people to adapt to new technologies and find ways to use them. By the time we adapt to AI in terms of the speed at which we're moving, we will not necessarily have enough time to adapt, meaning it will move so fast that by the time we figure a use of it, that particular use may be again automated by some advancement in AI. So that's the challenge we're seeing constantly.
Yeah, Ned, you raise an important question in my mind, especially coming from an educational institution, is how do we keep up, right, with all those types of changes? I mean, we've kept up. We've had trouble keeping up with education over the years with technology changes, and now with this acceleration that you're talking about, it's going to be even, 10 times, 100 times even more difficult. So that's going to be the challenge, I know, to a lot of the educational institutions for sure.
One thing that I think it's important to note is that, Ned mentions the kind of a sort of surplus of content leads to a devaluing of content. And on the one hand, the, elitist critic in me says, yep, I agree with that. On the other hand, I think one of the things that we've seen is that conventional notions of critical value have shifted, because as there is more content, there is also more access to content, and the access to that content has shifted, let's call it the hierarchies of value. Just because I choose not to value something doesn't mean that it doesn't have value for thousands and millions of other people. Now, there's a different issue as to whether or not folks are able to monetize that and hence make a living. And I think that's a very separate issue. That's a separate issue, and one that is, I think, an important part of this entire conversation. And I, for one, particularly to Ned's observation about the speed of transformation, I, for one, have little faith in governments and corporations to do the kind of regulation, to create the kind of safety net, if most places have not been able to do that historically, even when the transformation was longer and slower. I really don't believe that will happen when the transformation is so quick. And I think that has to be a critical part of this conversation, right? The economic fallout on a kind of job by job level, as well as the environmental fallout, given the enormous energy resources that are required as AI ramps up and continues to expand.
I agree with you here, Gabrielle. Like a lot of the policies that I have seen so far is like over-emphasizing the input in how we can regulate the input, which even the creators of all these technologies can do. So it only is making the process of evolution more cumbersome and creating more loopholes. So that is another conversation, but I agree with you here.
I love all of these points that have come up, covering so many different areas of especially jobs, rate of adoption. What's the support? I mean, that's a huge question. There's a question in our chat that says, how are organizations and companies supposed to appropriately train people? And jobs will change. And then also, I'm going to say, the human creativity relative to the work environment, right? So if you're problem solving and you're creating a printing press, or you are an artist and you are creating content, or you are having this amazing thought of, oh, wow, well, if I do X, Y, and Z, that could get me to here, and this is how I want to build my business, and this is how we're going to grow. So there's all of these things that you all are talking about brings us to our next topic, which is jobs. And I think, Joe, you're in a very unique position from a workforce development place within a university or college in New Jersey, and for us too at NJIT and NJII and my particular group, right? So there's training and there's upskilling, yes, and then there's the human, like, oh, I am having this light bulb moment. So how do you all think that this will change with this new technology? Joe, what are you seeing, and are there any particular questions that you would have for our panel relative to your environment and specifically as it relates to jobs?
Yeah, what I'm seeing, at least from my end, Tracy, is higher education is evolving in more ways than we could have imagined. And what we're trying to do is, knowing that the 4-year degree still exists, is how do we create the pathways in and out of that 4-year degree where someone approaches it from a lifelong learning place and journey, rather than after high school, I graduate, I go and I pursue a 4-year degree and I stay at that university for 4 years. And I'm not suggesting that won't still exist, but I think more of the norm will be the people who are trying out with different micro credentials and different credentialing areas. And it's our job, I think, as educators to fit those credentials into a program that they could then pursue and on a much longer path. That's what we're seeing from higher ed right now, from my perspective.
Justina, I think you probably have an interesting perspective on this, just given what you do. What are your thoughts on jobs?
I love the question, and now with also the help of AI, we're able to see at a very granular level what does that transformation look like. So I'm going to share my screen to just show you a couple of examples that we have looked at. So we're talking. Let's see. Can you see my screen here?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Perfect. So let's talk about like a job like a technical writer or a human resource officer. There's a lot of mundane jobs that the human resource officer used to do in the past, and now with the clearing up of a lot of these tasks, a much higher value work will be done. So yes, Ned mentioned that a lot of work will get devalued, but we're also expecting many jobs to actually have higher salary due to the increase in higher value work. If you think of the technical writer, like this is, look at it, it's a before and after picture. A lot of the technical writer, there needs documentation, proofreading, content creation, writing, and all that. But with the advent of AI, you're going to see a lot more, like some of the proofreading and all of those skills, no more need for those, but higher level critical thinking, project management, coordination, time management, those more collaborative skills will become much more important. Same for finance. Like I think we have this binary view that if a task, if a role is impacted, it's bad. But actually, we are seeing that a lot of the transformations will become like amplifiers, like force multipliers. How is the impact of AI gonna augment a skill, right? So this is here a financial risk specialist, for example. And some of the tasks over here, they will get, the productivity tool. There will be a lot of automation here. So this line will show the automation. But skills like research and data analysis and actually a product development, those, even though they are impacted by AI, they will be augmented. So it's so important to see that picture, that the task may get automated, but the role is transforming, not just changing. There was one research that showed that teachers all will be impacted. There will be no teachers. That is not helpful. Mm-hmm. This chart, like, just very, very quickly shows what we call the explosion chart at the Institute. Here on the right is the jobs today. So you will see here the blue collar jobs. Then you're going to see here science jobs, medical jobs. These are clusters of jobs, and that is the distance between these jobs based on their skills. Now come AI, and AI is augmenting, automating, and doing all these transformations. You find more and more the blue collar jobs are also becoming scientists, and they're also becoming engineers, and the computer jobs are getting much and much closer to the engineering. So you see that convergence, and I think making that information very, very clear at the corporate level, at the individual, in all the career development conversations, how your job looks today and how it will look with AI, and how you can upskill and reskill, that is very important. And it's not just how do I learn AI. Again, AI with all that we have today is the access, the barriers to access are much, much lower today, right? But what we want to do is, how do I use that in my job? That's where that's what is very important. So rather than a course on AI, here is what you're doing as a truck driver. Here's what you're doing as a customer support, and how your workflow will change. That is, I think, what we need to emphasize, and that is harder because it's not a separate kind of, let me add a course, I fix the problem. No, that is not going to fix the problem at all. It may actually complicate things. Hope that helps.
Well, and AI is not just one thing. And I think that's another part of the challenge, right? We're using these two letters to cover something that is huge, tremendous. So, sorry, I had to pop that in there. Other thoughts from our panel?
Well, I can't help but note that, you say light bulb moment to revolutionary strategy. There are light bulbs, to be literal about this for a moment, there are light bulbs that have been burning for over a century. And it wasn't so much the invention of the light bulb as the evolution of the invention of the light bulb to change the filaments so that they would actually burn out, so that you could thus sell more light bulbs. And I do think that there was the discovery, there was the technology itself that was regarded as valuable, and then there was this is actually not going to make us any money. So within the notion of, let's call it like capitalist creativity, there had to be a rethinking of the strategy of the light bulb, for example. Which then went on to change the way that we understand it. And, to give another example about this from kind of light bulb moment to revolutionary strategy, there is a furniture manufacturer in Pennsylvania called Emco. And from the middle of the 20th century, they got a huge contract with the Navy to make aluminum furniture. And there's a chair that you all recognize. It's called the Navy chair. And what Emco realized, of course, is that they would make these chairs and they were virtually indestructible. And the trouble was, once you made them, you didn't need to make them again because they lasted forever. And so the company was kind of on the brink of going out of business, and it suddenly realized that very quietly in the 1980s, architects and designers had started embracing the Navy chair and specifying it for particular projects. And then this allowed Emco to say, oh, we'd never actually thought about ourselves within the creative space perhaps we need to reimagine the company in order to get into that creative space. And now, they're doing better than ever. They've commissioned all kinds of new furniture from leading architects and designers. And to me, that's how they got from an initial revolutionary strategy, which was going to doom them to failure ultimately, to reimagining themselves. And I think that there are these examples that we can look at where technological evolution has gotten a company or an idea so far, but then it actually required another kind of strategy that was part creative, part economic, in order to build something that was more sustainable.
Wow.
Should I chime in too?
Please.
Just kind of reviewing of like how the education set up today, and how Joe said something about how it is very difficult to adapt to fast-moving pace of AI. One thing that hasn't been emphasized or addressed here is the quantity. If the new jobs are coming up, nobody's addressing the quantity of new jobs, because the whole point of AI, yes, there might be new jobs coming, but how many jobs you're actually going to need? What it's really important to distinguish is the quantity of jobs, and how the massive amount of jobs that we'll transform or lost also have to have an equal amount of new jobs created. What's missed in the conversation is that the equation doesn't balance. The lost jobs on one side will not equate to new jobs created. As a matter of fact, it will be a fraction of new jobs coming out, because people that are doing research at universities, research companies, now instead of 10 people, you can do the same job with 1 or 2 people. People that have used to do data analysis, instead of 10, you can do the same amount of work using AI with 1 or 2 people. So yes, there might be a different kind of use of AI and different type of work that data analysts will do in the future. But we also won't need as many data analysts, because the whole point of capitalism is to improve efficiency. It's not to create jobs. It's improving the shareholder value. So I think this is where it's missed. No one goes on with the mandate to create more jobs. It's to create more profits. So if the profitability could be achieved using AI, then it's going to happen. So you actually have real world examples today. We don't have to go 100 years in the past. We have companies like Klarna laying off half of their staff, and then continuing to lay people off, and then even dropping vendors like Salesforce, because they now can replace not only humans, but it can replace some of the software vendors with their own AI creation. And other companies are following that suit. So these are massive cuts, right? At very top companies. IBM announced it. You've seen this in tech companies, where traditionally we have very, very strong job growth. Most companies are now actually limiting or reducing number of hires. So it is the quantity that might be created cannot even match the quantity has been lost. I think that's an important point to take. And I think that education, like in the internet age, when the internet came up about late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet boom happened, those that did not adapt to start to adapt their business models to the internet have become obsolete. Similarly, it doesn't matter what sort of you stand, whether you're white collar, blue collar. I think the ability to leverage AI is the first step. How you get to that point, I think you need to do as much as you can. It is not a guarantee that your job's going to be saved, but it's at least a possibility that you can augment what you do in a new way that you would be interesting to your employer, so that your employer can actually use a different set of skills than before. I also don't think that suddenly we're going to convert blue collar jobs into scientists and engineers. It takes a long time to educate an engineer or a scientist. And I think it's just not going to happen. A transformation like that is a utopia, in my opinion. And it's going to be inevitable that some of these jobs are going to get automated. what's the solution? I don't think anybody knows perfect solution, but that's why, and I agree, the government's not going to step in. Corporations have no interest in stepping in and providing a safety net. But what I think we need to recognize is that that's probably the place where the government has to do something. They might not, because they also are lobbied by corporations. So how is it going to happen? What's going to happen? No one has a crystal ball.
But I need to make a comment here, because I think there's a misunderstanding. There's another. I didn't say that the blue collar will become engineers and scientists. That wasn't it. The content of the blue collar job will have tasks that are traditionally engineering, and some other tasks traditionally on the science side. So there will be a convergence. The role will have more and more overlap. It is the closeness of the skills, not this job will become that. Another point I want to clarify, it is, while yes, if you are attached to a specific technology, there is a risk, because technologies are coming and going. So a lot of the layoffs in the technology sector they are fast adopters, and of course they didn't communicate what changes are making. So as during the time when a corporation is pivoting, there's always layoffs as they are transforming from one product line and vision to another. That will be the conversion. And while you are right that there will be a lot of layoffs because there isn't need for that project for that many data analysts, what we are seeing also on the supply side, so demand and supply. On the supply side, on the demand for products, right, is expanding quite significantly, because again, a small corporation now can do what was reserved for only a Fortune 500 at very low cost. So if you think of all the demand for products and for projects that is being created, it's not going to offset all, but it's not just that these jobs are eliminated, these new jobs are created, and it's an unequal equation. There's a lot more in the demand of the projects that will create more demand and transformations, a lot of need for transformations. So we don't know yet the exact quantities, but that we are already starting to see these trends.
Yeah, and the most effective, the research has shown the last 6 or so, 12 months, the most effective way for people to actually have a chance of being immersed in the new era is to really get immediately acquainted with the tools. Because learning generative AI is very different than actually becoming an AI expert. So you don't have to be an engineer to use generative AI tools. You can use your creativity. But it's also shown that when you have an expertise guiding you through use of these tools that are constantly changing, and we're talking about changes every few weeks, even experts are having a hard time catching up with these changes. Believe me, we all talk about it all the time. So, but the research and stats are showing that the only way, really, the best way you can stay abreast is to really play with the tools, work with the tools, and the most effective way is to work with somebody who already knows how to use these tools, who has some expertise, so that through osmosis you get that. Now, the quickest way is through not the 4-year college or whatever, the long, several weeks of classes, because again, you become obsolete by the time you finish the class. That whatever you learn in generative AI becomes obsolete every few months, right? Is because it's through connecting to experts, learning, applying in your work. That's the most important part. You immediately have to apply, and you have to come up with your own use cases, and be willing to try new things. So that's the research has shown that's the most effective way to actually have a shot at staying relevant in the workforce.
So in the interest of time, because it is 2:00, Ned, you have segued into exactly what the next slide was, which is path forward. Where do we start? And it sounds like the answer, or one of a few answers to that, is by learning, understanding, rolling up your sleeves, trying a variety of technologies and figuring out what does or doesn't make sense in your particular world and in your particular environment. And it sounds like, as with any other technological advance, there's a lot more that we do know than what we don't know. But with that, if anybody has something quick that they would like to close with, I would invite you to do that. And in the meanwhile, I will just share what we have coming up as the LDI in concert with the message of the world is changing, the technology is there, and there are opportunities to learn in short course. But closing remarks, thoughts from our panelists.
Critical thinking still matters.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, and AI is great, really understanding what problem to be solved and what are the guardrails for solving these problems, and who actually evaluates that this is a solution to the problem defined, not a new problem. All of this is gonna make the human more and more important, but we have to pivot. We have to adapt quickly.
And yeah, from my side, if our listeners, if they have really interesting use cases they're facing in their work, or and they would like to sort of apply AI, happy to talk to anyone who's interested and give some advice on that. So feel free to reach out through Tracy, and please feel free to share my contact information for those who want to explore some more.
All right, Joe, thoughts?
Just it's important to educate yourself on any of these new technologies and these topics, and as I think everyone has said today, we don't have it all figured out, and it's going to be fun trying to work our way through all of this content and this material, and you still need to be educated for sure.
All right. Thank you everyone for your time today, our listeners, our panelists. This was terrific, and I will be in touch with all of you. Thank you, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Joe, and Jed and Justina. Thanks for the thoughts.
Thank you
so much. Great panel. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.